Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
Not much of anything, man. Just, another day in paradise. And what can I say?
Are you in the rumor and innuendo now more than ever before, do you think?
I don't deal in rumor and innuendo.
Well, that's what we're here to do today. Debunk.
We're going to talk some innuendo and rumor.
Now we're going to talk some Bam Bam Bigelow. I'm pumped about this one, man. A little old school.
Bam Bam. I love, you watch Flintstones, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I thought, man, first of all, Betty was hot.
Okay.
And Barney Rubble was probably one of the most underrated actors of all time.
Is there a personality in wrestling you would compare to Barney Rubble? Who was wrestling's Barney Rubble?
Well, fuck, there ain't nobody compared to Barney Rubble. He's a good actor. He should have got one of those Academy Awards.
Okay.
From the Academy. Do. Oh, you're the guy. I'm sorry, man. I know I told the story, but it's like every time I see him now, I just go, oh, dude. And it goes back to the Eddie Murphy Eddie Murphy talked about when people would see him on the street and go, oh, Eddie Murphy, fuck you, man. Fuck you. And now Michael flatters himself by comparing himself to Eddie Murphy and go, oh, dude. I know you, dude. I don't know why Silva's the only one that does that to him, but Huh?
Are you all right? You're shot out of a cannon today.
What?
I'm no, never mind. I'll tell you off air. Hey, so
what's that song? I'ma get with the Black Eyed Peas or somebody. I used to listen to your house. It's not the Black Eyed Peas, I know that, but who the fuck was it?
I don't know what you're saying.
Okay. Yes, you do. You sang it to me. something like that.
I just like that you're in a good mood. You don't look sleepy or tired or stressed.
What the fuck would I have to be sleepy, tired, or stressed about?
I agree. I'm glad. Let's record the date and time. I'm not angry.
You just said you was angry. Why are you angry, B?
Oh, I'm not.
Connie, talk at me. I can tell when you're angry. I can tell. I'm looking in your beady little eyes right now. You're angry.
I am pumped up that we're talking about Scott Bigelow, born in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. As you're listening to this, 2 days ago would have been his 60th birthday. Another guy gone way, way too soon. He was a high school wrestler who had some success, but ultimately didn't graduate and did some various careers, shall we say. Things like being a bodyguard, being a bouncer, being a bounty hunter. I guess all the B's, actually. Anyway, Bam Bam Bigelow is legendary for a lot of things, but there's a story I found in my research I did not know. Allegedly, while he was working as a bounty hunter, he was shot in the back. And he spent like 6 months in a Mexican prison. Did you ever talk to him about that?
I spent a little bit of time with Bam Bam. I don't know that a lot of his alleged background is necessarily 100% actual factual.
Oh,
actual factual.
So it may have been a fishtail.
Might have been.
Because he would have been an awfully young individual to have spent 6 months in prison and been shot in the back. But either way, eventually, thankfully for all of us, he winds up at Larry Sharpe's Monster Factory in New Jersey.
I'm a bee. That's the song. I just looked it up. It's I'm a bee. I'm a bee. Black Eyed Peas? What's the Black Eyed Peas?
I never played this song for you.
Look at me, Mr. Current. Okay, I'm sorry. Larry Sharpe. Jersey. Wildwood. Asbury Park.
Yeah, what can you tell us about the Monster Factory?
You know, the Monster Factory back in the day was probably the only, at least to my knowledge, was really the only commercial school that got any kind of publicity, that was actually out there. I don't want to say advertising, but looking for students and actively advertising, if you will, and just getting the buzz out there for people. And it was kind of the go-to if you wanted to be a wrestler, because there weren't a lot of wrestling schools that were publicly known. And the Monster Factory was something that was, you know, it got featured on different shows where, hey, you know, you want to be a wrestler? Well, there's a place you can go. It's the Monster Factory in wherever the fuck, New Jersey. And they do personality. Larry Sharpe was a character. And man, Larry pumped him out. Larry had a reputation for finding big guys and unique characters, if you will, that would come through there. And so Larry was kind of a go-to guy if you were looking for an extra in a movie and things like that, of a big nasty wrestler and shit like that. So you'd go to Larry Sharpe, say, hey, you got anybody that's training with you or that you've seen?
That's what I wanted to ask. How often would you do that? Is that something you would reach out for, or who would?
No, I'm saying in general, like the movie and television types that were looking for extras and things like that. That, you know, Larry kind of had that reputation because he had a school that people knew about. It was like, hey, well, maybe we can find a wrestler. And I hear there's a guy in New Jersey that's got a wrestling school that notoriously pumps out big guys.
Well, chat me up about, from the WWF's perspective, when you were there, and I realized that he's actually going to pop up before you do, but, so you weren't involved in that, but did you guys
wasn't involved in what?
Recruiting Bam Bam Bigelow to the WWF?
He wasn't there before I was. He came after I came.
Really?
Yeah. Right after.
Well,
I wasn't involved in recruiting him, but he came after.
I thought he showed up maybe, I mean, I'm not arguing with you, but I thought he showed up like a month ahead of you. When did you first officially start?
April.
Oh, okay. Well, he was May. Yeah. I thought you were June for some reason. Yeah, okay. No. So chat me up. In that era, this is pre NXT, it's pre OVW, it's pre Florida Championship Wrestling, it's pre Ohio Valley. Was there some sort of methodology? I mean, how would you guys discover talent from, you know, fresh out of wrestling school, somebody who wasn't necessarily on the territories yet?
Well, we didn't. And Bam Bam had actually worked Texas. He had worked Dallas for Fritz in the world class territory. And there was a point in time that Bam Bam was allegedly going to be coming in for Bill Watts in UWF Mid-South. So I don't know how serious those talks were. I know that he was on the radar, at least for Watts, because he had been working in Dallas. And he wore the all black gear and shit like that. And the only thing colorful about him was his head and the flames tattooed on his head.
We'll get there. I want to mention when later Bam Bam was interviewed about why he got into professional wrestling. He says, quote, "There wasn't much else I was qualified for." As you mentioned, he was from Larry Sharpe's Monster Factory, considered the prize student at the time, and he actually has his very first debut wrestling match at Studio 54, August 23rd, 1985. And this show is probably most famous because this is really the first promotional effort of Paul Heyman, who once upon a time was trying to make his way in that business, and I think provided photography services and things like that. But he's going to throw his hat into the ring as a promoter, and he books Ric Flair for an appearance and the debut match of Bam Bam Bigelow. Have you ever heard anything about that show or that event or how it came to be? Did you ever talk to Paul or Bam Bam about that?
Yeah, I talked to Paul about it. It was, you know, his kind of first foray into doing something, and it was more with the nightclub scene in New York. And Paul, you know, was looking to bring in some guys, and I think Flair was the big attraction at that time.
Yeah,
to be able to bring Rick in for this event, but Rick wasn't working or anything like that. So, yeah, it was just a stunt more than anything, for the nightclubs to be able to put on an event. Hey, come see wrestling. We're going to have live professional wrestling at Studio 54, which was a pretty cool concept at the time, that hadn't been done. And it was a different way to get exposure, and pretty smart on Paul Lee's part.
Larry Sharpe's Monster Factory would go on to produce quite a bit of talent. Guys like Big Show, and even someone more recently, Matt Riddle, I think, went through the Monster Factory. Of course, these days ran by Mr. Cage as opposed to Larry Sharpe. But the legacy of the Monster Factory lives on, Bruce.
Yeah, it does. And I don't mean to kind of poo-poo on the Monster Factory and Larry Sharpe. But it did not always have the best reputation in the world. It was looked at in a lot of ways as, I don't want to say a scam either, but a scheme, if you will, that Larry took people's money that had no real
aptitude for wrestling.
Yeah. And had that reputation. And then after that, Larry would tie himself to people like Bam Bam to take percentage of whatever they got and things like that after training them. And it wasn't always it just wasn't always the best of reputations. If you came out of the Monster Factory, in those days, people kind of looked at you sideways, because I don't know that Larry had the best reputation in the business. And I can only speak for myself dealing with Larry Sharpe through the years, in that Larry was always straight up with me, couldn't have been a nicer guy, and at least never gave me any reason to think that I never thought of him as a bad guy. I thought, wow, you hear the rumors and you hear the innuendo and all that good shit. So you're a little trepidatious in dealing with him. But I found in my dealings with him, at least one-on-one, which there weren't a lot, but Larry was always, pretty straight up and a straightforward guy. So I never understood where that came from, other than maybe some of the old timers I hung around with didn't have a high opinion of him. And the whole tying himself to guys that made it big and trying to take points out of whatever they got. So
on the heels of that, I feel like it's worth mentioning that I think Danny Cage has owned it for like 10 years now. Not Larry Sharpe. Do you know Danny? Have you met him before?
I've met him one time. Nice guy. I met him at a seminar in San Antonio with my brother, and nice guy. But other than, hey, how you doing, and having dinner with him one night, I don't really know Danny.
I guess what I'm trying to say is he doesn't have this negative reputation that precedes him that perhaps maybe Larry Sharpe did once upon a time.
No, and I think that the negative was probably based more in guys that had worked with Larry over the years and maybe just didn't like him because it was the only actual people. Well, Bill Watts. I don't think Bill Watts had a high opinion of Larry, but
Bill Watts didn't like anybody besides Jim Ross.
Good point.
Yeah.
So you got to look at the people that he liked, and then you judge them that way. And well, there you go. But also, like Strongbow and people like that up in the Northeast didn't really have good things to say about Larry. Vince was always real nice to Larry and never had a problem with Larry, being around and things like that. So again, I can say from my experience with Larry, I never had a bad experience with Larry, but it was whatever you would say. Yeah, he's one of Larry Sharpe's guys. People would go, oh boy.
Just one more time. That's not what they're saying these days. Don't want to bury a guy's current business. So roll tide, Danny Cage.
Yeah, no. I mean, it was more Larry, not necessarily the other thing. And I have no idea other than, I can speak to Matt Riddle and those guys. I worked with Matt in MLW, and great guy, obviously. But my point is that whoever trained Matt, I think, did a pretty damn good job.
Let's jump into it. People are really taking notice of Bam Bam, mostly because of his size, and then you stick around for the tattoos. But he's 6'4", 390 pounds, but probably most notable for how agile he was. I mean, he could do some, at the time, relatively high risk maneuvers. When was the first time you saw Bam Bam break out some of that fantastic stuff that you wouldn't expect a man his size to be able to perform?
I would say probably, in World Class in Dallas was the first time that I took notice, but I'd seen Bam Bam in one of those, whether it was Access Hollywood, or it wasn't Access Hollywood, but it was one of those type of shows that did a feature on the Monster Factory, and saw Bam Bam because he was a unique cat. So people were looking at him because of the way that he looked and his size. Bam Bam didn't work like a 350 pounder. Bam Bam worked like a 200 pounder and could do some really amazing things and had tremendous agility for a big man. Maybe too smooth.
I wanted to ask, how do you differentiate? We've heard the advice of quote unquote veterans a lot in wrestling who would say, oh, he's doing all this stupid shit. He just needs to be a big man. Just be a giant, wrestle like a giant, be a giant. But then you see a guy like this break out all kinds of crazy stuff and fans seem to really dig it. What's up with that? Where's the line where this guy should, but that guy shouldn't?
I think it depends on ability as to whether or not they can do it. When you see a big guy do it all the time, it becomes commonplace.
It doesn't matter. It's not special.
Right. If they break it out every now and then, it makes it unique and it makes you go, whoa. If you do an amazing maneuver over and over and over again, you get used to it and it becomes a spot instead of a spectacle.
Well, it is a spectacle to see Bam Bam Bigelow. He's going to make his way down to Memphis in the CWA. He's going to be pushed pretty high up the card and even work a program with Jerry Lawler. And that's actually the first time, or the first thing of his I've seen, is like a highlight tape they made down there that they played on TV. That was really pretty cool, especially for the time. Did you see any of his Memphis stuff at all?
I probably saw a little bit of it, but not enough to really matter, I guess. More than anything, I probably saw a little bit of it. Again, the first time I really saw much of his stuff was out of Dallas.
Do you know the whole story on how he got the flames on his head? Because that's obviously the thing that people still remember the most. But you and I have never talked about how or when that came about, and I assume it probably would have come up at some point.
I wasn't there. I don't know. I wasn't even there.
So you never asked him?
I don't know. I never asked him. Never ever asked him. Do you know?
No, I don't know. I was asking you. I didn't know if he got it when he was in that Mexican prison.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, man, come here, Vato. Hey, yo, Vato, come here, man. I want to do something to your head.
Hold still, Holmes.
No, man, come on, man. You're just going to feel like a little prick. Well, man, don't come here, little prick. Come here. And he woke up with flames on his head.
Probably something just like that. Then he goes to World Class Championship Wrestling. He's going to portray a Russian here. And why is he a Russian here in 86? Because everyone's a Russian in 1986.
Well, if you're big and you're bald and menacing, well, by God, you're a goddamn Russian.
Do you remember his Russian name?
Oh shit! What the fuck? Was it Crusher Yurkov?
Yes.
Old C. Yurkov?
Dude, Crusher Yurkov, can we just be honest? That's a rib name, is it not?
I didn't do it.
I'm not saying you did it, but I am saying, hypothetically.
Hey, Yurkov, come here.
Doesn't it?
Hey, y'all met Yurkov? I mean, come on.
Dude, it sounds like, right? It's like if it was Billy Whack Me Off was, come on.
You know Billy?
You see? He's a hell of a hand.
Next week on Something to Wrestle with, Billy Yak Me Off.
So listen, we're going to talk about something that is really dated here, but Bam Bam even wins Rookie of the Year.
How many years?
Just the one. As far as I know,
my brother Tom won Rookie of the Year, I think 3 years in a row.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
There was a guy who used to wrestle at NWA Wildside with Bill Barron's named Sal Renaro, and he's still with NWA. Anyway, I saw him years ago as the 2-time Rookie of the Year. Thought it was the fucking coolest gimmick ever. And here your brother had it. Was he promoting himself as a 3-time Rookie of the Year?
No. It's just every territory he went to was like this young rookie, Tommy Prichard. You know, he's Cowboy Tommy Prichard out in California, because anybody who comes from Texas got to be a cowboy. And when he got there, they said, "Hey, you got a hat, some chaps?" Thinking that just everybody who came from Texas always carried a hat and chaps in their bag. Well, hang on, let me get one. You want yellow or blue? What the fuck? But yeah, Tom, everywhere he'd go, was young, and so they'd make him, this young rookie. They'd have their own local Rookie of the Year. Do you know who beat him out, Rookie of the Year in PWI in his actual real rookie year?
Who? Okay.
I think Terry Taylor was the Rookie of the Year, and Tom was runner-up.
You ever bust Tom's balls about that?
No, because he was a 3-time Rookie of the Year. Cockadoodle guy was only once.
Okay. He gets noticed enough to get booked over in New Japan Pro Wrestling in January of 87. So just to recap, the guy is like 16 months in the business and already booked by New Japan. That's a pretty big damn deal. Is it because they had so much success with the other American wrestlers because of his size? What say you?
I think Inoki had a fetish for the big guys to bring in a big, nasty looking heel for Inoki to beat. So yeah, I think Inoki liked that style, that type of talent.
Well, he's only there for like 4 or 5 months before he debuts with the World Wrestling Federation, May 26, 1987 in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And, he's going to debut in his home state and in the town that he's announced from his whole career. Pretty cool little deal. Do you remember his first match or him coming in or how that all came to be?
Yeah, I remember he came in and was very bland. Wore like black short shorts and then the top that he wore pretty much for his career. It was almost like a butcher top, but it covered a little bit more of his body. And for being as big as he was and, from the neck up, as colorful as he was, it didn't match. It was very bland and kind of blah. And it was blah enough to almost take away his uniqueness. Because then he just became a heavy dude that happened to be bald with a tattoo on his head.
Right.
There was nothing special about him that made him stand out. And so then, we looked at, okay, what can we do to color him up and to make him stand out in a land of giants? He was a big guy, but he was a big guy that had some extraordinary talents and could do an awful lot for a big man.
Who else would have been working with talent? I mean, I know you're fresh, so you're I think you've laid out on the show in the past, you were really doing a little bit of everything. You weren't necessarily doing only this or only that. So you're all over the place. Anyway, who would have been working with talent? Would it have just been agents at the shows? And who do you think that cast and crew may have looked like in 1987? Yeah,
it was the agents, Chief Jay Strongbows, Tony Gurrias, Pat Patterson, Monsoon, guys like that would work with talent on a weekly basis and or at the house shows. So the agents that were in the house shows were able to work with them every night and Pat at TV. But it was more at that time that we would put guys on the house shows to go out and see how the audience is reacting to them before you'd ever get on television. And then get a feel for what they do, what they are, and ideas as to what to do with them from there. They'd make every TV and work from there.
Talk me through what sort of transition you think a wrestler would need to make in order to be ready for the prime time in the WWF, really at the height of the golden era. Here in the shadow of WrestleMania III, there's more people watching WWF programming than ever before. Your network, your syndicated network continues to grow by leaps and bounds. You've got primetime specials. You've got late night specials. You've got a lot of really great stuff on the horizon, not just on cable, but on broadcast television. And now you're taking these talent, and this one in particular, he's 2 years in the business, less than that. And now he's going to be a part of this roster. And sure, he may have some of the quote unquote moves down, and he might understand basic match structure. He learned all that in wrestling school and through doing matches across the country and even in Japan. But now he's got to really turn the volume up and be a personality that's larger than life. And he's a relatively young man here. What did that process look like? Because it feels a little overwhelming when you put it in context like that.
I think it probably was overwhelming for Bam Bam. He had been used to kind of being out on his own, and really his only mentor being Larry Sharpe, who I think that Larry probably fed into his head. Don't trust anybody. Just more than anything, an attitude of distrust. I think with all promoters and anybody in the business that wasn't Larry. So I think Bam Bam kind of had that in his head without any validation to it. I don't know that anybody had. I think Scott had been in the business that long to have that kind of a feeling or to feel that way, exclusive to his own endeavors. So, Bam Bam coming in, it was a pretty raw lump of clay that you could mold with some decent foundation and some pretty good skills.
We've heard over the years that, the WWF is the land of the giants, and that Vince has an affinity for larger than life characters. And we've even heard an explanation, what do they look like in an airport? Do they turn heads in an airport? Is everyone, wrestling fan or not, paying attention to that person? And that could be based on size or star value or natural charisma, whatever. They have some sort of magnetism about that. Did Vince see that in Bam Bam? And would he have seen it without the head tat?
I don't know if he would have seen it without the head tattoo, and I don't know that Bam Bam would have had the same swagger without the head tattoo.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think that it all kind of came together in a neat package, and the tattoo probably gave Bam Bam some of that swagger and some of that strut that he had naturally.
It is interesting to go back and think about what if. I mean, in this era, we should also mention, you've told us before that you guys were really looking for, it's a babyface territory. So there's a lot of other territories in the country that they wanted to have a heel champion and all the baby faces chase. Vince and even his father preferred a babyface champion taking on all comers, a guy like Bruno Sammartino, and now it's Hulk Hogan's turn. When you see a guy like Bam Bam Bigelow at his height, his weight, and his agility, but then, as if that isn't enough, the crazy head tat, do you just think, oh man, we sharpen that guy up and he'll be perfect for Hogan on a Saturday night's main event or whatever? You're looking primarily for not necessarily your next Hogan, but who can Hogan's next opponent be? Is that fair to say?
It is, but in Bam Bam in particular, we were looking at, holy shit, what an attraction he can be.
So did you think he could have been a babyface? Oh, well, you didn't see him. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Didn't see him as a heel. Saw him as a huge babyface.
Wow. Okay. A storyline begins on July 20th on Primetime Wrestling, where Bobby Heenan is doing commentary, and he claims to have signed Bam Bam. And then Jimmy Hart, in an insert during a Honky Tonk Man match, claims to have signed Bam Bam. And then Mr. Fuji, during a demolition match the next week, we would see he signed Bam Bam. And then Johnny V does the same routine during an Islanders match. And in fact, Slick does one.
They must have been reading the dirt sheets.
It's a nice storyline, Bruce, if you can just behave for a little bit.
Why?
It's a nice way to say, hey, all the heels want to manage this guy. And that just really lays out really a different time in wrestling. It felt like every major heel or hell minor heel, they all had heel managers in this era. And that was also something that harkened back to Vince's dad, did it not?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much, in order to, give mouthpieces and to know exactly what side of the fence they stood on.
Do you prefer Johnny V, Slick, Mr. Fuji, Jimmy Hart? Who was your favorite manager from that era?
Oh, God.
Besides Bobby. Come on.
Bobby's the only one.
Yeah.
It goes Bobby to Jimmy Hart and drops off after that.
Was the inspiration for this whole manager thing, was that taken from the Randy Savage Miss Elizabeth debut? Because we saw a lot of people vying for his services in 1986, and it wound up being the debut of Miss Elizabeth. Is that sort of, hey, this is the updated version of that?
I think it was, it was definitely similar and along the same path. It was a way just to garner interest in him before he ever debuted.
So it's going to narrow down on August 29th. All the managers have been ruled out except for one, Slick. And it's announced the next week that Slick and Bam Bam are going to make their first appearance together, but it's a swerve, bro. Bammer turns down Slick, and it's Sir Oliver Humperdink named as Bammer's manager. And now he's a babyface, and he's going to go on to defeat Nikolai Volkov. Was this always the plan? Tease that he's a heel and then stiff arm him, make him a babyface? And why was Humperdink the right guy for that?
We were looking for, Bam Bam's promo skills were not that good. They definitely didn't match his look. And trying to find someone who could talk for him and again, add a little bit more color to Bam Bam Bigelow. And Hump had been somebody that had, inquired, wanted to come in and do some different stuff. But it was new, and Bam Bam was new. We were looking for something fresh and new, and Hump had never been a babyface, I don't think, in his entire career either. But it was just something different, and it was giving a babyface a manager and bring Humperdink in as a brand new face. So you got a new face and a new manager and a whole new life.
You got any good Humperdink stories? It feels like that guy's a real character.
Oof.
I mean, he looks like a walking, talking gimmick and a half.
Well,
road trips.
I don't know if there's any I can repeat.
Come on.
No, Humperdink. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody that had anything bad to say about Hump. I'll tell you that. He just was a really mellow guy. Liked to smoke his pot and just chill out. Quite the ladies' man.
No.
Yeah. I don't, it's funny, just some of the things that, you form opinions and you form preconceived notions a lot of times before you ever meet someone. And then you get to meet them. You see the public person, then you meet and you get to know the private person. Hump was quite the ladies' man. He really enjoyed the ladies.
Did he have anything in common with
Alfred Hayes?
Yeah.
What? Maybe.
I'm just asking.
I never did I ask him?
No,
Hey, you got a whale rope in there, pal? What you packing? No. The fuck kind of question is that?
Well, you're the one who offered that up about Lord Alfred. We didn't know that.
You were asking me. I saw you. You were looking at me and you were going, Alfred Hayes.
I did. Oh, that's a lie.
You did.
You were just thinking about Dong over there. Tell the truth.
You forget I can see you. This isn't radio.
I can see you too, kind sir.
Yeah. All right.
So anyway, give me a good Humperdink story. You got any good ribs? Any good drinking stories? Any marijuana stories? Any? It just was always so much fun to go out with him because you could get really chill and relaxed, and you would watch him kind of work the room. You go out to a nightclub or what have you, and some people would be absolutely repulsed by his appearance.
That's an actual word that was used to describe him by a young lady one night. You're repulsive. And he says, my dear, you're charming and so lovely that I could repulse you all night long. You know, little things like that. You couldn't insult him. You couldn't hurt his feelings. He just, it was, you know, there's certain guys you look at and go, man, I don't know how the hell that they would ever get laid type thing. And you know, like the cool guys sometimes would sit back in a bar like, oh, I'm not going to go and talk to any of these girls here. I'm too cool for that. Bullshit. Hump was in the middle of it. Hump would talk to anybody and everybody and would hardly ever walked out alone.
Hump knew it was a numbers game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, and he didn't give up.
A friend of ours once said 18%. And I was like, what? I was like, 18%. What does that mean? 18, you ask 100 chicks, 18 are into it. So what's your plan? He's like, I'm going to go ask 100 chicks. I'm going to take my pick from the 18. Like, I don't think it works that way. Let's see how that works.
Well, there's 100 chicks there to choose from. Maybe it would.
Yeah.
Have you tried this?
No, didn't have to.
What's your percentage?
Well, my father-in-law set me up on my deal. So
yeah. So it's an arranged deal.
Yes. She didn't have a choice in the matter. If you read the internet right.
Huh. So he made her. Was there any money exchanged?
Well, that's what the internet just
is like a couple of camels and your first, second, and third, fourth born. You can have the third one, or
it was a collateral for Rick and New Mortgage. So,
oh, okay, that makes sense because you're a mortgage guy.
He's only got 25 years left, and then she's all paying off. So Bam Bam's on TV winning squashes in pretty impressive fashion. He's got a slingshot splash, and he's on the road to winning lots of battle royals. His ring attire, though, the flames, boy, who came up with that? I mean, that presented him as a major star, did it not?
Yeah, well, that was Vince looking at his gear, just thinking it was plain and dull. And he had fire on his head. Let's put fire on his body too.
Fantastic. It's been said that Bigelow was actually brought in to be Hulk Hogan's understudy and a tag team partner, maybe to help Hulk in reducing some of the work on the road and maybe even give Bigelow the rub. Do you remember that ever being discussed?
Well, we were looking at Bam Bam as being a top babyface. So, you know, anytime you're looking at bringing in a top babyface with Hulk, it is to complement that and or replace it at some point. I think that's what we were looking at Bam Bam for, to come in and be a star.
Well, he's going to make his pay-per-view debut on Hulk's team at the Survivor Series. Check out this team. Hulk Hogan, Don Morocco, Ken Patera, and Paul Orndorff, all teaming with Bam Bam Bigelow. Boy, where's that old Wendy's commercial? Where's the beef? It's all on that side of the ring. They're going to wind up taking on the Heenan family, which is Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, Butch Reed, One Man Gang, and Rick Rude. Never mind, there's the other half of the beef. Lord, this really is the land of the giants. So what about that team, man? Don Morocco, Ken Patera, Paul Orndorff, Hulk Hogan, and Bam Bam Bigelow.
Well, you said it right when you said the beef, and that was, you know, of course, the famous Hogan must pose. Yeah, Bam Bam got the win, but, well, this wasn't the, but you know what I mean.
Either way, though, he's the last babyface standing after Hogan is counted out. He's going to pin Bundy and One Man Gang, and then he gets pinned by Andre.
Andre didn't like Bam Bam.
Really? Tell me about that.
Oh, go back and watch some of the fucking matches. You watch Andre grab him by the top of his, you know, his top garment, as Paul Bosch used to say when the Tarzan. Well, he's wearing the over the shoulder garment. Well, Bam Bam, Andre would just reach out because he didn't have any hair to pull, so he would grab him by his top shirt, his gear, and just yank him and throw him around. And Andre treated him like a rag doll. Not a fan of Bam Bam's at all. Firehead.
Why though?
Andre didn't like big guys. And I think that he felt Bam Bam had a bit of an attitude coming in. and that he was a young guy that hadn't really earned his stripes in Andre's eyes. Just didn't like him. Andre, you know what? When you're 7'4", 500 pounds, and they refer to you as the boss, you don't have to have a reason for pretty much anything you do.
Well, fair enough. But what a vote of confidence it is when Hogan goes down. Bam Bam's the last babyface. I mean, I know Andre's going to win, but still, that's a pretty big damn deal.
Yeah, it sure is. And that was, kind of what we were trying to portray is that this guy's a player.
So he gets a big win over Hercules on Saturday night's main event, November 28th, 1987. Are you having any sort of communication with him? I mean, how's he doing? How's he holding up to the pressure? I only mention that because now he's a big TV star. He's got a little bit of notoriety. He's probably making more money than he ever has in his life. And he's a relatively young man, but a big man making towns all over the country. Is this, too much too soon? How's he handling this personally?
I think he handled it all right. I think there were times that it may have been a little overwhelming, but for the most part, I think he handled it as well as he could have at his age. He's like a year older than I am. And I could kind of relate to it on a different level of a whole lot really fast. Somebody used to say to me, it's like, drinking water out of a fire hose. It was a lot, but I think for the most part that Scott handled as well as he could at the time. There were moments, there were definitely moments where he just didn't understand. I don't think he ever understood, why Andre didn't like him.
So, I'm just wondering, from a, sex, drugs, and rock and roll standpoint, he's keeping it between the ditches.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. In your opinion, in hindsight, was it the right move to start him as a babyface and then transition to heel? Or do you think he could have maybe capitalized on some of that 1987 Hogan run, standing across the ring from him rather than shoulder to shoulder?
I think that when you're looking at that stable of heels at the time, that it was the only thing to do with him.
Yeah, it was a solid.
Because on the other side, you had a pretty stout fucking lineup.
Yes, you did. Well, in 1987, he wins a Slammy. One of the first years you guys did that. And of course, this is the first show that you produced for the WWF, I think, where you were had your reins on the thing. But you guys have an award called Best Head. Of course, Bam Bam won that.
Well, who had better head than him?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Well, he won, didn't he?
So you, in your opinion, he had the best head in the WWF in 1987.
At the time, yeah.
Has there been better head there since?
Luna Vachon?
Oh, okay. That was an interesting one. I could see that.
Yeah.
What about Golga? Does he have good head?
Who?
Golga?
The fuck is Golga?
He was part of the Oddities. You used to call him John Tenta or Earthquake.
Oh, okay.
Wore a leather lumpy mask and sweatpants.
I never saw him without the mask, so that's all news to me.
Oh, okay. So to begin 1988, Bam Bam is teaming with Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden. Process that. He's starting 1988, headlining with Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden. And he's taking on Andre the Giant and Ted DiBiase. It looks like he's going to be substituted on a lot of the arena shows in this time. Was he having physical problems or homesick, or is the grind just getting to him, do you think?
I think that it was a combination of everything. I think it was a combination of the road and being a big guy, man. The road will wear on you a little bit more. Just, getting up, going through airports. I think his body was taking its toll, the kind of schedule that he was working. So it was a combination of everything. And I don't know that he was necessarily, after a while, it just takes its toll.
So he blows his knee out in Hartford, March of 88 against Dino Bravo. He's taken off the road.
Wouldn't you?
Everybody got hurt against Dino, even Bret Hart. and he's replaced by Jim Duggan. I guess it's his injury that caused One Man Gang to beat him in under 3 minutes at WrestleMania IV. I mean, it seems like he's an odd guy to go down that quickly in that form and fashion on such a big card. But if he's hurt, right? You got to put some star power on there and put some lipstick on that pig.
Well, and again, at the time, different time, different place, and guys kind of played through the pain and didn't always want to go, hey, my knee's bothering, maybe I can't do a whole lot tonight. That was the nature of the beast at the time.
According to the rumor and innuendo, quote, Bigelow had gotten the superstar attitude from Japan and rubbed some people the wrong way who resented his being used on top immediately. He was roughed up on a couple of occasions, once by Andre the Giant and another time by Sika of the Wild Samoans, who busted his nose. He grew up with nothing and fell in a bad crowd. He got rich and famous very quickly, but he made a lot of bad choices. He really didn't handle the fame, the money, or the women very well and went into a downward spiral. Do you remember the whole Sika thing where maybe he was rubbing him the wrong way too? You explained the Andre thing. He just didn't like big guys. But Sika, how would we have gotten sideways there if you had to guess?
I don't really remember, but I do remember, the time frame after kind of the first year of being pushed to the moon and being the guy and being talked about. Oh my God, this is the guy that, was going to replace Hulk. This is the guy. It's an awful lot to absorb. In the beginning, Scott came in as a very humble guy, and he really, again, he did well. He did well handling it when you look at his age and you look at what he hadn't been through. Okay. A lot kind of got dumped. It kind of goes back to Larry Sharpe and people saying, oh, well, Larry's pissing in his ear, and just kind of, they made excuses for him.
I see.
But I think that it was just age and lack of maturity and too much too soon. Again, I've seen guys handle it worse. So, and maybe it's just because I always liked Scott. I always thought he was a really, really nice guy and a pretty humble guy. So I probably, would make excuses as well for him. But I think, when you step back and you look at it, yeah, maybe he could have handled some things better.
What leads to his eventual exit in 1988? Is it these personnel issues with Andre and Sika and those types where he's just rubbing people the wrong way? Or is it the way it was recapped? He didn't really handle the fame, the money, or the women very well. Do you think it was just became too much of the rock star lifestyle? We're not focused on our work as much as we are having a good time?
I think it was more than anything the reality of the situation, in that maybe he needs a little more time away from here to mature and to hone his craft a little more.
So it happens. He makes his last at Madison Square Garden appearance on June 25th. It's in a loss to Andre the Giant. It's going to be his last appearance here for like nearly 5 years. And Bret Hart has said of this match, Andre, quote, practically killed him, end quote, and that Bam Bam just grabbed his bag and left. Did you hear about this, for lack of a better word, mauling in Bigelow's last MSG appearance against Andre?
God, I was there.
What do you remember about that night?
Just brutality. Bobby Heenan would tell the story that you could almost, well, maybe not almost, that you could hear Scott like just trying to get the hell out of there. And Andre, again, you go back and watch it. It's got to be on tape somewhere. Andre just pretty much manhandling him. And I think in some ways, I don't know if it was Andre trying to get Bam Bam to either fight back or, to see, okay, what are you made of, kid? And maybe if he had actually fought back with Andre, it might have been a different scenario. But the fact that he didn't, whether it was out of respect or out of he just couldn't, I don't have that answer. But Andre pretty much beat the shit out of him. And just brutalized him.
Isn't that like a catch-22 if you're one of the guys? Like, on the one hand, because I feel like you nailed it. You want to be respectful. I mean, everything in wrestling is about respect, and you shake everybody's hand and you take care of the guys, and you never take liberties with guys, and you respect your veterans, and the veteran calls the match, blah, blah, blah. And now here you have a veteran beating the shit out of you, doing exactly what you're not supposed to do. And on the one hand, it feels like, well, this is a hazing thing and I'm supposed to just grin and bear it. But on the other hand,
I think most guys would look at it and say that if somebody's being really rough with you in the ring, and if you don't fight back, then you deserve what you get.
Okay.
So sometimes it can be as trivial as a test to say, all right, man, are you going to fight back? Are you going to do something? Or are you just going to be abused?
Let me ask you this though. And I'm not saying this to be funny. I'm just saying hypothetical, because I realize this is going to be a stretch the way I position it, but it's what we're talking about. If he would have fired off on Andre, and before you laugh, hurt Andre, when he comes back to the back after he's, sort of hurt the quote unquote golden goose, is there not going to be significant heat on him there? Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, to me, it's like practice in the NFL, right? You don't hit the quarterback. You don't hit the red jersey. So you're not going to mess with the golden goose. And I'm not saying that he was at that point. So clearly it was Hulk Hogan, but Andre's up there. And I just think about, man, if somebody would have did that maybe years later to a Shawn Michaels, if Shawn took a liberty, for instance, and they could hurt him, it feels like, boy, you'd have got your ass chewed when you went through the curtain. Sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Am I right?
I think there's a difference in fighting back and giving a receipt and letting somebody know, all right, you're going to hit me that hard. I'm going to hit you this hard, and let them know. And then, you figure it out from there to go out and hurt somebody. I don't think Andre was out to hurt him.
Yeah. There's a difference.
If Andre wanted to hurt him and take him out, Andre would have hurt him and taken him out.
Right.
So it wasn't that. And, who knows what Andre's motives were in that. It may have just been, I don't like you and I'm going to beat the shit out of you tonight, and you can fight me back, and we can fight and we can go. But who knows, at that point. And I think that if, Bam Bam had at least fired up some, been able to fire up, then don't know if it would have been a different outcome.
Was Andre untouchable in that era from Vince McMahon? I mean, when you said, oh, I remember this, I was there. So clearly Vince would have heard about it. Does Vince go to Andre and say, God damn, pal, trying to make some guys quit beating them up or whatever the fuck?
I think if it was excessive, yeah, definitely would. But you go back, it's like Warrior. One of the things that got Warrior over with Andre is through all that shit and Andre beating the living shit out of him. Warrior fought back.
Yeah.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Shitty as Warrior was. He stood there, he took it, and he came back. So that was Andre like, okay, this is what you're going to get when you fuck up. But you know what? I'm going to work with you because you're in here fighting for it.
What an interesting subculture this is. Do you know if Andre and Bam Bam ever mended fences before Andre passed?
I have no idea. I don't really know.
Do you know if Andre went through sort of, every now and again when guys have shall we say a moment of clarity, they're going to go around and try to make amends. And you often hear that people do that when they're fresh out of recovery or when they feel like, man, I'm not in good health. This might be winded down for me.
Not that I've ever really heard of. And I don't know that, for the most part, I don't know of anybody that Andre would have done that with.
All right, so we know what's happening next. Bam Bam's going to head over to Jim Crockett Promotions. He won't sign an exclusive contract because he's still doing these New Japan tours. Did you lose touch with him? Did you keep up with Bam Bam at all through his Jim Crockett or New Japan or UWF experiments?
No, I lost touch with Bam Bam after he left.
So he comes back to the WWF. At the time, he's being pushed very heavily in New Japan as a tag team partner of who we know as the Great Muta. Were you a part of the negotiation to bring him back? Does he come to you? Do you come to him? How do you remember him coming back to the company?
No, I think he just called Vince and asked, to come back. And that was during a time that for whatever reason, they mended fences and moved on. So absolutely come on back.
Halloween 1992, Bigelow's promoted as returning on Superstars, and then in late November, he does return and defeats Jerry Fox in 1 minute and 59 seconds. Of course, you're back that November as well, or I guess actually before that. Chat me up though. What was different about Bam Bam here in 92 compared to 1988? Is it just the maturity and that made all the difference, or was his work different as well?
No, to me, I think it was just the maturity. And you had somebody who had kind of been through the wars and hopefully grown up a little bit.
So it's announced that Bam Bam is going to take on Big Boss Man at Rumble 93. Of course, he's going to get a big return win on pay-per-view. Meltzer gave it 1 star. They go 10 minutes and 10 seconds. Bam Bam picks up the win with a headbutt off the top. Meltzer would write, Boss Man has gained a lot of his previous lost poundage back. Lots of people went to the popcorn stand during this match. Crowd was way down because they were following such a hot match. But still, it's interesting to think, and again, the wrestling business is a changing. This is Bam Bam's first singles pay-per-view win in the WWF. Like, when he was there the first time, pay-per-view was really in its infancy. Now it's a regular part of what we're doing, but this win over Boss Man here in 93 is his first pay-per-view win. How about that?
Kind of crazy. A little cray-cray. I'm a bee.
No. He's scheduled for WrestleMania 9 against Kamala, but the match winds up being cut due to time. So Bigelow's been around for a while at this point. Obviously, he had a run here before, and he gets his match with Kamala cut. I know we've talked about these type situations before, but I'll ask again. Do Kamala and Bigelow still get paid here?
I'm sure they did.
How disappointed are they when, hey, everybody in this era would say, man, we had to wait till we got our WrestleMania pay-per-view to know, or payday, before we knew if it was a good pay or a good year or not. Like, so much of your entire year hinged on WrestleMania. And again, they may be cut, and as you said, they're still getting paid, but it's got to be a little bit of a letdown. I mean, WrestleMania is still obviously the Mac Daddy now, but back then, there weren't super shows every month or twice a month. This was next level special, and now you've trained and gotten ready and keyed up and you're excited and you got your shit together, and sorry, pal, your match is cut.
It happens. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, Bam Bam took it in stride. I talked to Kamala. He said, oh, yeah. He was fine.
Perfect. Luna Vachon is put with Bigelow. Of course, she had the best head that year, as we know. Is that pairing simply because of their great head? Yeah. They both had great head.
Yeah.
The best head, you might say.
Yes.
So it's portrayed as Luna being
pair of heads.
It's portrayed as Luna being his main squeeze, but it's never really gone into that they're attached romantically. Like, you don't see some of the on camera sparks that you would in other situations like this, but he does refer to her as his main squeeze. Can you talk me through that?
They just like to squeeze each other.
This is fun.
You're like my big squeeze.
I appreciate that. You're my medium squeeze. Bam Bam Bigelow's first singles match main event on a pay-per-view. He's our Mexican squeeze.
Okay.
King of the Ring against Bret Hart. We covered in the archives, but still, when he gets to go on top with Bret here, that's kind of a big deal and a vote of confidence. Now that we're out of the quote unquote Hulk Hogan era and we're in the Bret Hart era, one of the first guys he's going to work with, Bam Bam Bigelow. Pretty cool little nod, huh?
I think it is, but it was also a testament to, no matter what, with the exception of times that he was hurt, I don't know that Bam Bam's work in the ring was anything that anyone ever really complained about. And I think that Bam Bam was always a great worker and was able to deliver in the ring.
Bam Bam and Tatanka are matched up after King of the Ring, and it leads to Sherry Martel and Tatanka coming together against Luna and Bigelow. And Bam Bam is actually a part of Sherry's last WWF appearance in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, when Luna and Bigelow are going to attack Sherry, but Tatanka makes the save. We've covered that in the archives, but Was it important to Sherry to sort of help put the rub on Luna on her way out here?
Absolutely. And Sherry was probably one of the most unselfish talents you'd ever run into. Sherry loved to get other people over.
You told us a little bit earlier that there was never really a question about Bam Bam's in-ring work. Well, on the heels of this, he's going to start putting over Tatanka on most of the shows because Tatanka is doing an undefeated streak. But we just read earlier that perhaps he had an attitude his first WWF run. Did he have any issues putting over Tatanka on the house show loops here?
No, he didn't.
You don't have to be disgusted about it.
Well, it's like, oh my God, in a couple of cities in Japan, he was, come on. You're talking about the rest of the world versus an isolated area.
Well, no, it wasn't about that. It was that perhaps he got treated like a star over there. So he came back with a case of the big head. That's the way I read it.
Okay.
It's announced at SummerSlam 93 that Bigelow.
That's why he had the best head. Because he was a big head.
He did have the best head. It's well documented. He's going to team with the Head Shrinkers to face Tatanka and the Smoking Guns. The match gets 2 3/4 stars. They go 11 minutes and 15 seconds. Losing effort here. Next up, Bigelow's kind of floating around the mid card, but unfortunately it's about to get worse. It's going to transition to a feud with Doink, which will lead to one of the all-time classic awful matches at Survivor Series. But before we get there, Doink versus Bigelow. Who had more fun with this, you or Vince?
Well, I didn't have fun with this. I had fun with Matt Osborne Doink, and Bam Bam didn't like Matt for whatever reason, and Matt, was battling his demons at that time to the point that we had to let Matt go, and it was right in the middle of this, whole Bam Bam angle, and Bam Bam says, I've got a guy that, you put him in the Doink suit and the Doink, hey, you'll never know the difference. And he's a better worker than Matt Bourne. And it was his friend. His name, I think, was Ray Apollo.
Yep.
And Ray, super guy, just did not have the innate charisma of Matt Bourne by any stretch of the imagination. The more we tried this, we brought Dink in, who was Tiger Jackson from Montreal, to be his sidekick. Everything that we tried, it wasn't, Matt Bourne made Doink. Matt Bourne as Doink was hot. You hear people laughing, but when they talk about the shitty Doink, this is the era of the shitty Doink. It wasn't Matt, and to me, it wasn't Doink. It was the replacement Doink. And I don't think that he was half the talent of Matt Bourne. And had you had Matt Bourne in the same situation, people would be talking about, holy shit, this was insane.
Well, it's Survivor Series, Bruce, the last pay-per-view in the Boston Garden. It's promoted as Bigelow, the Head Shrinkers, and Bastion Booger against 4 Doinks. And the 4 Doinks are Men on a Mission and the Bushwhackers. That's right. The 4 Doinks turned out to be Men on a Mission and the Bushwhackers. And even they beat Bam Bam Bigelow, Bastion Booger. And
put your hands in the air. Wave them like just... What was it? What was it? Come on, Bruce.
Come on, Bruce.
Come on, Bruce.
Come on, Bruce.
Come on, Bruce. Oscar used to come to our shows often. We'd have Oscar do a little rap and introduce me from time to time on our live shows. I was into it. Come on, Bruce.
That's the way it started or finished every time.
Yeah.
So I got a dud rating here as we expected. And after the match, there's Doink on a video wall mocking Bigelow. Of course, the readers of the Wrestling Observer voted it worst match of the year. Probably hard to argue that. Bastion Booger is going to turn face by kissing Luna because really the world needs to see Bigelow versus Bastion. Bigelow's actually going to wind up being a substitute for Ludwig Borga, who was injured and in fact never returned to the WWF at the Royal Rumble in a loss to Tatanka. Whatever happened with Borga? I know he popped up and tried his hand at MMA and then he was a goner, and there's been lots of rumor and innuendo over the years. Anything you remember about that fella?
Well, there's a lot I remember about him. Some things I'd like to forget. Not a nice man, not a good person.
Oh,
Yeah, just not a very good human being.
probably
Tony Halm was his name.
Google it if you're not sure what we're talking about.
What's that?
I just was saying to our listeners, maybe throw it in your Google machine if you want more information on that.
Yeah, piece of shit.
We're not done with Doink and Dink. WrestleMania X, now from Madison Square Garden, will feature Bigelow and Luna against Doink and Dink. They go 6 minutes and 9 seconds. As you said, Doink is Ray Apollo by this point. It gets a star in 3/4. Yeah, not great. Meltzer would say it's a lot better than their house show matches, but still, woof. Maybe not what we would have wanted to see for Bam Bam. Is Bam Bam just lost in the shuffle here?
I think it was just timing more than anything, but it was coming off of really what, and again, it's all circumstantial. I think that if you had the Doink program that we had planned on going for a while with it, with a different Doink, it would have been a different story.
I want to ask, it feels like it's fallen off a cliff for Bigelow. Like he had this big run at first, his first run, now that he's back, and I get the players have changed and it's not the same company, but it doesn't feel like he's positioned nearly as strongly. Is it fair to say that Vince sort of had his mind made up on where Bigelow was, or maybe he had lost confidence from the first go? I mean, he's still willing to give him a job and give him a shot, and we'll see what happens, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't feel quite the same.
Well, again, I think that it was a lot of circumstance and just a lot of things that worked against it. And Matt being the biggest one in the present time that we're talking about here.
So, Bam Bam in just a year is going to have quite the transformation to go from 10 to 11. Let's talk about how we got there. First, he's paired with the $1 Million Corporation when DiBiase purchases his contract from Luna. I've always loved that angle where the $1 Million Man buys someone's contract. It always worked for me. Why was it time to move on from Luna though?
I think just more than anything, a change of pace and, to try and make Bam Bam a shining star or something else.
How do you think he fit with the rest of the stable, this $1 Million Corporation?
I thought he fit well, actually. I thought the Bam Bam was a good addition to it and gave that whole stable, I think, a little bit more credibility. I think that Bam Bam was the heater in all of that.
We should mention, it's led, of course, by Ted DiBiase, but you would have Ted DiBiase's The Undertaker, Nikolai Volkov, IRS, Tatanka, King Kong Bundy, Kama, Psycho Sid, the 1-2-3 Kid, very briefly, Santa Claus, and eventually a little fella named Stone Cold Steve Austin. I guess back then he was the ringmaster, so it worked out. But somewhere here in the summer of 94, you guys allowed Bigelow the opportunity to go back and work some shows in Japan. How did this come to be? How does he get special permission to do this? And 2 years later, it was not okay for Scott Hall to do this.
I think it was timing again. And it was one of those situations of doing a potential talent trade and using Bam Bam in that negotiation.
So Bigelow's going to team with IRS at SummerSlam to get a win over the Head Shrinkers, and then the $1 Million Corporation of Bigelow, King Kong Bundy, Tatanka, and the Heavenly Bodies would defeat Adam Bomb, Lex Luger, Mabel, and the Smoking Guns at Survivor Series. When you're going into Survivor Series, did you already have Lawrence Taylor in mind for WrestleMania? Or when would that have first started to become a conversation, and how does Bam Bam become the guy?
December was probably, it was probably December by the time that we got with LT. LT had announced his retirement and all of that. So, I want to say it was after Survivor Series.
How does Bam Bam come into the conversation? Why is he the guy who's ultimately chosen?
Again, looking at outside of our business, when you look at who is going to face Lawrence Taylor, you're looking at a big monster of a man with a very unique look that could handle himself in the ring with LT and be able to take LT through a match and know that he would be able to get that job done. And that was Bam Bam.
Do you remember the conversation or the sit down where he gets this intel? Is this something where Vince brings him into the office, or is this just a phone call or see at TV?
No, it was probably see you at TV and let him know here's an idea that we have, and we've got LT, and we'd like you to do this.
Do you remember his reaction? Was he thrilled with this?
Over the moon. Oh yeah, absolutely over the moon. For a guy like Bam Bam, coming from where he came from and also being a New Jersey guy, I think that was kind of a big deal. And LT was a bad. Get from this? Yeah, huge thrill. Who wouldn't love that?
So the ball begins moving when Bam Bam and Tatanka enter the World Tag Team title tournament after the Smoking Guns are forced to vacate it due to an injury. They defeat Men on a Mission and the Head Shrinkers to get to the finals, which happen at the Royal Rumble. Ultimately, they're going to lose there to 1-2-3 Kid and Bob Holly. They get plenty of time, 15 minutes and 32 seconds. Meltzer actually dug it. He gave it 3 3/4 stars. Of course, the next night, Kid and Holly are going to lose the titles to the Smoking Guns because they're back in action. But this is around the time when things start to really look up for Bam Bam. Not winning the tag straps, no big deal. I got Lawrence Taylor. The rumor and innuendo from Dave Meltzer at the time said the Lawrence Taylor angle with Bam Bam Bigelow must have been great because many people who were calling after the show thought it was a shoot because of how Vince McMahon sold it. On Monday night, they really played it up as if it were a shoot, with Vince McMahon apologizing for it and announcing Bigelow's being suspended without pay, then bringing Bigelow out for an apology. It was obviously an angle because it fit perfectly into the storyline at the show, with people laughing at Bigelow for losing the Kid. They mentioned Taylor being there, giving a reason far too many times for them not to be running an angle with him, whatever that means. The giveaway live was that Taylor was laughing about it afterwards, and that the following night they made too many mentions of it. If McMahon had done the apology and it would have been dropped and forgotten, that would have been one thing. But the second time it was brought up made it obvious they're doing a Japanese style angle.
Oh, then it must have been great.
Since the WWF has never done Japan style angles, this will all look like a work because a lot of the people will be buying it. So listen, it's interesting the way this thing is booked.
God damn. Fuck me. Go ahead. Sorry.
Talk to me about the creative of him, sort of poking fun at Bam Bam and being a part of the crowd. And then it becomes a real thing. I mean, that's a cool concept, cool way to get a mainstream celebrity involved.
It was played to perfection. LT's there. LT loved to golf, and LT, was there to golf. And people that knew LT in the sports world, and it all, made perfect sense. Bam Bam's out there having a match. LT's having a good time throughout the night. Everybody's laughing. LT's in on it. Hey, laughing at Bam Bam, but then he sees Bam Bam and he wants to be cool with him. Goes, hey man, just having fun. Hey man, really good match. And Bam Bam takes exception to it. Fuck you, man, in the heat of the moment. And LT played it off perfectly, firing back and all this shit, because it was real. It was good. It was a damn good angle. We got it from all the Japanese commentary that we went back and studied.
Thank you.
How the commentators sold all that.
The build to WrestleMania is really unlike anything we'd ever seen at the time. It's built around the $1 million corporation and all the NFL players that LT is going to have at ringside. How was LT to deal with? Was he difficult? Was this an easy deal to put together? How did he take to training and all that jazz?
Absolutely fantastic. Top notch, man. Came and trained, worked his ass off, trained his ass off, had a respect for the business, was an absolute natural getting in the ring, and really worked hard and trained hard. So,
I know we don't talk about current stuff, but earlier this year, people were bragging about how great Bad Bunny was and that he took to wrestling and took it seriously, et cetera, et cetera. Would LT have been in that same category with somebody who just was really putting forth their best effort and not just trying to coast on being a quote unquote mainstream star?
Yeah. And I mean, again, it was here was a guy that was willing to do anything and everything and didn't want to be embarrassed, wanted to go out and bust his ass and prove that he could do something else. And this was looked at from LT's point of view as something fun and another way to keep his name out there and in the world.
How involved was Pat Patterson in putting together their match at WrestleMania?
Pat was in there every night with them and working with them. Pat was there for every single workout and helped lay out that match and just, got everybody comfortable.
Once upon a time, this was a bigger deal than it obviously became, but was there ever any discussion with Bam Bam about what was happening? I mean, it feels like it's a natural, Lawrence Taylor's winning. He just know that going in, or is that a serious discussion that had to happen?
No, I think everybody knew that going in.
So the WrestleMania press conference,
the only people that think it's a big deal to win and lose are people that aren't in the business for the most part.
Wait, nobody's ever came to you and argued about a finish?
Some people have, yeah.
Okay.
But for other reasons other than I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, losing is such a bad thing.
A lot of times it comes back to, what's the old phrase we hear? Where do we go from there? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which is a fair question.
Sure. So when we do the whole LT press conference in New York for WrestleMania, and LT accepts Bigelow's challenge, quote, anytime, any place. There's a public workout at Times Square we've talked about in the archives for the Diesel episodes, but really it's just a huge gathering that has LT and Bam Bam turn into a gigantic brawl, which is just a great visual. You guys, of course, would recreate this sort of public workout media chaos for WrestleMania.
Oh God, we shut down Times Square and did a public workout at noon in Times Square in front of that little ticket office and shit. Set up a ring, shut it down, had our buses for dressing rooms across the street. It was an ungodly spectacle. It was brutal, and it was so damn good, but everybody was there for several reasons. One, that we shut down Times Square and that we had this hoopla and this just mass chaos in the middle of New York City, middle of lunchtime for everybody, and just traffic jams everywhere. Plus the fact that you put LT, this great, New York Giant legend, in a wrestling ring for a public workout, and just chaos ensued. So in that regard, a success on every level.
Is this something where you not only have to have a lot of permits and a lot of big checks written to the city, maybe you make a donation here or there, but are there some $100 handshakes going around if you had to guess to make something like this happen? It feels like just an unbelievable task to think, oh yeah, we're just going to shut down Times Square and do some wrestling.
Oh, it was definitely, it was huge. And something like this, man, no, you've got to have all your permits and everything out the ass, ahead of time. This wasn't a run and gun. Oh, hey, let's go set up a ring. Let's see what we can get by with. No, this was everything up front and making sure everything was covered.
So Hartford, Connecticut, it happens. WrestleMania 11 is the main event. They go 11 minutes and 42 seconds. Of course, Lawrence Taylor's going to get a special entrance. Salt and Pepper are going to do What a Man. Pat Patterson is...
What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty big man. He's a man. What a man, what a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty big good man. He's a man.
I don't think.
Yeah, they wrote that special for LT, man. They wanted to do that for LT.
Well, hang on. They sang the part where he says, yes, he is. You want to go ahead and do that? What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Go ahead and hit it.
Yes, he is.
Come on, sing it, Bruce.
Yes, he is.
Okay, that's really not it. 11 minutes, 42 seconds, 2 3/4 stars.
I don't know.
Meltzer would say,
I'm a bee.
Will you stop it?
Wait, I'm a bee. I'm a bee. Okay,
I'm going to be whooping your ass if you don't get back on track here. I'm going to have to crack the whip on you. The match was entertaining and both deserve credit for keeping it from being bad. And listen, I know that seems like a negative way to go into it, but if you really are a wrestling quote unquote purist, a lot of times when you hear there's going to be celebrity involvement, the biggest thing you can hope for is just don't let it be a disaster. And this was anything but, right?
It was excellent.
I agree.
It was damn good, man. Come on. For an outsider to come in and have the performance that LT had, absolutely tremendous. Especially with the omen of the huge pyro that we had planned for LT, which were these giant letters LT that lit up and then shot off all this crazy pyro and everything. And the fucking thing fell. It was probably, I don't know, maybe 20 feet above the ring. And they lower the damn thing and we get ready to shoot off the pyro to rehearse it and see how it looks and everything. First time doing it. And, it's one of those, everybody clear back from the ring. We're going to be lowering this. We're going to be shooting pyro. We got to test this, make sure it's good. And it hits in the fucking, I don't know if it was the L or the T, but one of the letters just drops and crashes in the ring. And I remember looking at Vince going, well, I guess we won't be doing that entrance tonight. Next. Just had him take that shit down and take it back. Whatever. I think it was the L because it broke.
That's hilarious.
When it hit. Oh, it was fucking horrible, man. It was like, God damn it. But I bet it would have been cool had we been able to do it. So it'd still be in an open somewhere.
Tell me about Vince's reaction to this match. Is he all over Bam Bam when he comes through the curtain in Gorilla? Great shit, pal. Is he thrilled with what he's seen here?
Yeah, loved it. It was excellent. It was a damn good job on everyone's part. Even, you go back and the football players that we had down there that were pros all the way through. Chris Spielman, class just personified. Ken Norton, Steve McMichael. They were every one of them was a pleasure to work with and happy to be there. That I remember them coming up like the day of or the day before. We got in the day before. They were all arriving in the lobby of the hotel and just were just fucking great. But they asked me, said, hey, I hear you guys have a party after WrestleMania. Do you think would we be able to come to that? What? Dude, the party's for you, and they all came and were just respectful and great. That was a great crew of people from outside of our business that came in, appreciated everything we did, and embraced it.
Let's talk about the show. Even though immediately afterwards, you guys are bragging that it set all kinds of records on pay-per-view, it fell short. It was down 15% from WrestleMania X, but the gate was $750,000, which is like double what WrestleMania X was. And in fact, it's the 7th largest gate in America. So huge numbers here. And the pay-per-view is actually costing more money. So even though we're down 15% when total buys, we went from $29.95 to $34.95. So we did get an increase there. Do you remember being disappointed that all this mainstream publicity and press didn't translate to the number of buys you'd originally hoped?
I think it was a little disappointing, but at the same time, there was, we temper our expectations because looking at LT's appeal outside of the New York market, you had to be realistic about it. And yes, he was a badass football player. He was beloved in New York.
But badass football player doesn't translate to the rest of the world. That's an American sport.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, LT was enough of a celebrity beyond that we kind of hoped it would, but at the same time, we all kind of had all right, this is going to be good for us. This is going to get a lot of outside media and different eyeballs on us. And to that, it did. Was it as big as we hoped? I don't think so.
As far as featuring the NFL, we've certainly seen other opportunities where NFL players got involved in WWE, but we haven't seen another NFL player headline a WrestleMania. Do you think that could ever happen? Is there such a thing as, at this point, it feels like WWE is such a global brand. Obviously, once upon a time, it was primarily North America, but that's no longer the case. And I just wonder, does football translate maybe the way basketball or soccer or some of the other sports?
Globally, I don't think it does. But however, when you look at United Kingdom and what have you, football is a big deal over there.
Yeah.
I think the rest of the world, when you say football, they're talking soccer.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily translate unless it's a Tom Brady or, Peyton Manning, somebody like that. Peyton would mean shit right now, but a Tom Brady would.
Here's something worth discussing. The rumor and innuendo from the Observer at the time. The idea was that after Bigelow put over Taylor, they would have mutual respect. Bigelow was to turn babyface and it would lead to SummerSlam where they would form a tag team. But after doing one wrestling match, Taylor decided against another. Whether it was the bad publicity or he saw himself as selling his career, Taylor would later say doing WrestleMania was a decision he regretted. And we never saw him again on WWF TV, but when I said he was supposed to do something at SummerSlam, you were shocked. So I guess you're calling bullshit.
I am calling bullshit.
Okay.
Never the case.
It was always a one and done.
Yes.
Did you ever pitch anything else, or were you like,
we pitched if LT would like to get in the business, the door was open for him.
I see. So not as a one-off, but like, if you want to work Topeka, come on over.
Yeah.
Got it.
Or Wichita.
Sure. Why not?
Bigelow
was ultimately fired from the $1 Million Corporation and turned babyface after losing to Diesel on the April 24th edition of Monday Night Raw. And then Bam Bam and Diesel are put together against Sid and Tatanka for the main event of King of the Ring 1995 in Philadelphia. We've talked about this show before, but process these names: Diesel, Bam Bam, Tatanka, and Sid, and they go 17 minutes and 35 seconds. It gets a 1.5 stars, but Meltzer would be critical, saying it had a flat finish. Diesel's going to give Tatanka what's described as a very sloppy jackknife, and he's going to pick Tatanka up at 2, signal he wants Sid to tag in, and Sid just walks to the dressing room to build up their rematch, which leaves Tatanka alone to be pinned. This is not the best creative we ever had in the WWF. Can we agree?
I don't think it was that bad. It was to build to the next pay-per-view on a show.
There's talk, in hindsight, that this is around the time when the quote unquote clique would start to, as Bigelow described, sabotage his career. He felt like they were shitting on his work to the powers that be, and it was obviously affecting his push. And he uses this match as an example of that. Do you think in hindsight, Bigelow was just being paranoid? Or was there some real professional jealousy that, politics were at play? Cause they are a thing.
It was actually both. And I think it was Bam Bam being overly paranoid. And it was also the clique giving him reason to be paranoid by telling him they were doing these things. Was Vince listening to it from the side of, oh my God, I've got to do something about Bam Bam? No, Vince liked Bam Bam and was continuing wanting to do something with Bam Bam. But I think that the clique and those guys kind of played into Bam Bam's paranoia.
Shawn Michaels is really going to turn around the same time as Bam Bam did. And I think he would even say even that overshadowed his turn. And he's going to continue this feud with the $1 Million Corporation, leading to a pay-per-view match against Henry Godwin, who's trying out to be a member of the club here. And he gets his last pay-per-view win in the WWF at In Your House 2. He's going to lose to the British Bulldog on In Your House 3, and supposedly afterwards negotiates a release to end his contract with Vince McMahon early. What do you remember about how his run came to an end and what he was frustrated about? Or I know he finishes up after Survivor Series 95, putting over Goldust on the way out, but why was he looking to leave? It's not like wrestling's here in a boom in this era.
Yeah, I think that he was just kind of feeling and buying into the hype of, hey, the clique is really burying you and do all that he didn't feel that he had a way out. And I think that was one of those where Vince, and I even told him, it's like, Scott, just do your shit, man. Go out and do your job and stop worrying about what the boys are telling you, what the boys are stirring in your head. Go out and do your shit. I was like, I just don't think I can succeed here. And he wanted out. So the fact that he was that uncomfortable, wanted out that bad, led to Vince saying, okay, well, here you go.
Do you think Vince was, or perhaps Bam Bam thought Vince was disappointed in him, or maybe he was disappointed in Vince's, I don't know. It just feels like if you're working WrestleMania in the main event with a non-wrestler, and then on the heels of that, you're, I don't know, maybe a little lost in the shuffle. I just don't remember anybody main eventing a WrestleMania and leaving the company the same calendar year.
Well, I don't think he was lost in the shuffle. He was put into a place where he could have thrived, but I think in his own head, it was not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had already convinced himself, well, this will never happen because they hate me. That wasn't the case.
So he's going to go back to, the independents. He finds himself in ECW, becomes a big player there, wins their world title, eventually jumps to WCW for a bigger contract, starts by attacking Goldberg, but very quickly he's sort of moved down the food chain there. And of course, as we know, WCW's purchased by the WWF while Bam Bam was under contract. So he's going to ride out that Time Warner deal and never work for a major promotion again. Were you surprised that he never popped back up anywhere? Were you guys ever interested in reaching out and seeing if maybe something could, you guys would bring people back all the time for like a Royal Rumble spot, Mr. Perfect or Gold Dust or whoever, just a one-off. Did anything like that ever even get discussed for Bam Bam?
I don't remember it really being discussed, but I would say that the door would have always been open for him.
He sadly passed away January 19th, 2007, unfortunately due to a drug overdose, like so many other folks we've heard over the years. When was the last time you talked to Bam Bam, and how do you remember finding out the news that he was no longer with us?
God, the last time I saw Bam Bam was at an ECW event. I couldn't even tell you, what that time frame was, but it was cordial. It was great to see him, and hugged and shared pleasantries back and forth and talked for a little. That was the last time that I saw him.
What do you think his legacy will be? Not just in the WWF, but in wrestling. I mean, it feels like a guy who, he did some great stuff, but I don't know. Is it fair to say that potential is still a word that would be thrown away around for him? Because I don't feel like he achieved all that he could. It feels like he had talent that was bigger than what we got to see.
I think that would probably be the best descriptor, is to say that he had a great deal of potential, and I don't know that potential was completely lived up to. I think that he, based on his look, on his ability, that he should have been much bigger than he was and achieved much more than he did.
We got a lot of questions about Bam Bam. He's got a ton of fans. There's no ways we'll get to them all, but let's do a few here. Jared from Texas wants to know, was there ever any consideration in using him in the Mabel spot in 95? I've heard Kevin Nash say that although they may not have gotten along, he had no issues working with Bam Bam.
No, not that I remember. It was kind of during a time that was during a Mabel time of looking at a big nasty heel and using them as a one-off against Diesel as a babyface champion that we were looking to feed. So I don't think that was actually ever a consideration, but God bless Texas, Jared.
Thomas Davis wants to know, who's the one guy who would have been an amazing opponent for Bam Bam that we never got to see?
I think that if you were to equate it to of all time, you look at a guy like Keith Lee, I think would have been an amazing opponent type thing. Just agility and what have you. But on the other side of it, you're going to laugh at this, but I think Kurt Angle would have been able to get matches out of Bam Bam that would have been extraordinary.
Tremendous. Corey wants to know, was there anyone other than Bam Bam considered for work with LT at WrestleMania 11? So let's just pretend, even if the answer was no, who else on that roster could have done it, do you think?
I think Razor could have done it.
Wow. That's a great call.
And could have done it well, but I think, also at the time Razor was a gimmick, but I think that Razor, because he was a gimmick, would have been great. But his ability to work and his ability to talk, he's a big, good looking bastard, I think would have been a hell of a matchup.
Rocky Bear 52 says, could Bam Bam have fit in both the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression era?
Yeah, definitely, with some tweaks. Again, I think that one thing that lacked in Bam Bam's offense was aggression. I don't know that he always had that
killer
overt
instinct.
Aggression.
Yeah. Jeff Luxon says Larry Sharpe had been managing Bam Bam Bigelow up to this point, and Bam Bam had said, and I guess in a shoot interview, that Vince McMahon didn't want Larry Sharpe and went with Oliver Humperdink instead. Is there any truth to this? What's the full story? I know you sort of touched on it earlier, but do you remember there being a decision that, okay, we want Bam Bam, but we don't want Larry Sharpe?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that Larry was selling himself, as a package with Bam Bam, and Bam Bam made it very clear also that they weren't a package. So there's two sides to that story.
Got it. Greg says, were you ever tempted to get a tattoo on your head? And if so, what would it be?
Savewithconrad.com.
Thank you. Appreciate that. One last one. Steve Hates Wrestling says, was there ever any talk of feeding Bam Bam to the Undertaker during Taker's big man period? He brings up a great point, man. You had Undertaker working with Kamala. He got Bundy at a WrestleMania. He got Gonzalez at a WrestleMania. Bam Bam and Taker at WrestleMania could have worked.
Maybe they did, but they worked outside of WrestleMania.
Well,
they did have a little bit of a program, and they did work together.
Well, next week you and I are going to be working together. You're not done with me yet. You're going to have to talk to me about Greg the Hammer Valentine. What do you think we'll talk about when we talk about the Hammer next week?
Well, we'll probably talk a little bit about his father, Johnny, and the fact that when Greg first, let's go in and dig into a little bit deeper on Greg. Let's talk about Johnny Fargo and Greg coming in initially, and how Johnny didn't want to admit that Greg was his son because it would make Johnny seem old, and Johnny brought him in as his brother at first. And when he first came in, he being Johnny would get Greg booked. Well, we'll talk about this next week, but Greg's an interesting cat, and a little slow, but methodical, and a sick, tough son of a bitch.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring our Bam Bam Bigelow episode to a close. Don't forget, you get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com, and we hope that you will check us out there. But I'm fired up, man. Next week is going to be a good time talking about Greg the Hammer Valentine. We've got lots of other fun stuff coming your way. Later in the month, we're going to talk about one of my favorite, maybe unsung hero pay-per-views, In Your House Mind Games, number 10, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We'll also hit Unforgiven 2006. We got Saturday night's main event from October of 87. We'll hit up In Your House Buried Alive, and we'll actually watch some old Raws from both 96 and 01. It's going to be a fun fall, man, as we cruise into September, October. Is this weather doing well for you? It's not nearly as hot as it was. How you feeling? You liking this time of year in Connecticut?
Can you see out my window right now?
It's pitch black.
Oh my God. But I mean, it's lighting up with the thunder and lightning. We're getting, the the back end of that horrible storm coming through here tonight. It's supposed to really, really get bad. So everything's kind of flickering around here a little bit.
Everything's perfect here in Alabama. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, good. I hope it's perfect when I get there. And we're not going to discuss one thing about wrestling for the first 6 days, and then we can do a show.
By the way, I don't care if we ever talk about wrestling. I'll just be happy that you actually showed up to something here.
I'm not there yet, pal.
Oh, I know. That's why I was just putting it out there that it's not happening. I understand. You're going to have to rewrite 19 shows and all kinds of other stuff and save the world and put out 4 fires and probably save a baby. By the way, speaking of that, did you ever hear that story about Bam Bam Bigelow running into a fire? Saving some lives?
No.
You didn't hear that? Okay.
All right.
Well,
fine. You better do something before this goes out again.
I'm wrapping it up. We're winding it down.
I'm hearing every other word.
Oh, really? Is it that bad?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Are you getting all of me? All of me. Why not take all of me? Don't lift your shirt up and show me your nipple like that again.
By the way, just so we're clear, the allegations for why he wound up being in prison: aggravated assault, attempted kidnapping, criminal restraint, drug possession, robbery, and sexual assault. And apparently when he did the stint in Mexico City, it was for acting illegally as a bounty hunter in Mexico. So stressful.
So did he actually do time or not?
You know, I haven't looked up the records, but that's the rumor and innuendo. That whole burn I was talking about, the fire and whatnot. July 4th, 2000, Bigelow received 2nd-degree burns on 40% of his body while rescuing 3 children from a fire in New Jersey. And he wound up spending 10 days in a hospital after that incident. And I'm sure you just ran right over there and sent him flowers and thanked him for his heroic effort.
All right.
But next week, we're going to have some heroic effort.
We're going to be talking about Greg Valentine next week.
Right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Rock on.
Are you okay? What was the yelling for?
I don't know. Because of the fucking... You seriously can't hear this shit.
No.
Oh my God. You're deaf. I can't... Well, maybe because this is on directional, so...
Did you just put your headphones up to the window thinking that I could...
Okay. You can't prove that.
It's the microphone that makes the noise, Bruce.
I know, but I wanted you to hear it.
I know. That's not the way it works. We'll see you next week. Bruce is sleepy, tired, and stressed. He's trying to let me hear things by putting the headphones on them.
But I can hear it through the headphones.
But the microphone is what receives the noise.
But it's coming from the microphone, what I hear.
Okay. Well, we love and appreciate you, Bruce, and we're glad you were able to make time. Go back to saving lives, Bubba. We'll see you next week right here on Something to Wrestle.
Rock on.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.